Hello, everyone. I'm Dara Bunjon. I'm the food enthusiast here at Jaymore Living. I'm a food writer, food stylist, PR maven, and a frustrated baker. Those watching live, feel free to post questions in the comments section for our guest or for me. You'll see me take a look to the side from time to time to see if there are any comments or questions coming in. Today's guest is Rob Kasper, a Baltimore writer. For close to 3 decades, he was a reporter, columnist, and editorial writer for the Baltimore Sun, often writing about the area's food and drink. In the fall of 2011, he left the newspaper to write Baltimore Beer, a satisfying history of Charm City brewing, a book now that is in its fourth printing. In 2014, Kasper wrote his third book, Baltimore Baseball and Barbecue with Orioles Boog Powell, Stories from the Orioles Smoky Slugger. He has won numerous writing awards from his peers, the Association of Food Journalists. He has been honored 5 times. He's also been recognized 2 times, recognized twice with the National Headliners Award. He's retired and enjoying life, his garden, his grill, and much more. Let's welcome Rob.
Hello.
Hello, Rob. What's on your plate today?
Oh, beautiful day. God, I was out there yesterday. I was replanting my tomato seedlings. I had started them under a grow light and put a lot of them in little containers, and then I'm teasing them out, putting them in individual containers and talking to them, telling them to get going.
Okay, yeah. Get going. So do you do any heirloom tomatoes, or are you doing?
Yeah, Cherokee purples are my favorite go-to tomatoes. Prudence purples I like as well. Sun Gold cherry tomatoes, and Clementine is a new one, a new sort of cherry I'm trying this year.
Okay. So let's go back to the beginning. You're a Kansas City boy. How did you end up in Baltimore? Tell us how that happened.
Well, I followed my wife, basically, is the short answer to that. I had worked, after getting out of Northwestern graduate school, I worked as the third string high school sports reporter for the Hammond Times, and I was bowling editor at the same time. So that's what you get when you get a master's degree. And then I worked in Louisville, Kentucky for the Louisville Times, which was the afternoon paper of the Louisville Courier-Journal. And my wife was taking a job in healthcare policy here, and so in the Washington area. And so I applied and was going to go to work for a publication called the National Observer, which was a weekly paper put out by Dow Jones.
Right.
And I was hired by it in June. I was supposed to report on July 5th, and it went out of business July 1st. So so I ended up freelancing for a while and eventually got a job at the Sun.
Okay. Are you totally retired now? I mean,
most days.
Are you doing any writing?
Yeah, I'm doing a little writing. I'm doing some writing for the neighborhood. I live in Bolton Hill, and they've asked me to do some. People have asked me to write some histories of Bolton Hill community projects, and I'm doing. So that's most of what the writing I'm doing now.
Why food? I mean, it's you were obviously financial, sports. How did the food? What was the genesis of you writing the food commentary columns?
Well, I think basically, when I look at how I ended up getting a job being paid to eat, I go back to the kitchen table that I grew up with in my family in St. Joseph, Missouri, which is about 50 miles north of Kansas City. And there I would notice that was where you learned a lot of things if you sat around the corner or sat near the kitchen table and were quiet, because that's where adults would debate things like whether the Democrats or Republicans were right, or who made the best gravy, or all kinds of things. And if you just kept your mouth shut and listened, you learned a lot. And I think from, you know, it's a pretty good sized, pretty easy jump when you're a kitchen table eavesdropper to journalism, which is which prides itself in good listening and good storytelling. And so then of course, having been one of four boys, there was always a lot of activity at the kitchen table. And so when I started writing, I proposed to write when I got to the Sun in 1979, I proposed writing the column about food, and it was not a column about the mechanics of food. It was rather a free-ranging column, and it was mostly about eating. So that's why it was called The Happy Eater. And at first, the editors, men, didn't think it was going to work because people, only wanted to read in the food section recipes. And I said, no, that's not true. So thanks to Kathy Lally, who was then the feature editor at the Sun, she let me go ahead and try the column. And that was also propelled by the fact that I promised I would write the column and then continue to do all my other work. So and in journalism, if you volunteer to do extra work without extra pay, they generally let you do it. And so I wrote the column, and I guess editors would go to cocktail parties or dinner parties, and people would tell them that they liked this column. It was interesting. And so then it went from once a week to twice a week, and then eventually I added a third column, Saturday, on Saturday's Hero, and then the column was syndicated by the Los Angeles Times. It went to, at one point, back when there were a lot of newspapers, it went to about 50 newspapers around North America.
It's fabulous. It's fabulous. You've done 3 books. You've written 3 books. The first one was Raising Kids and Tomatoes. Now, that's a collection of some of your columns. Did you ever sit down and figure out how many food columns you wrote in the 30 years?
No, I don't think I did, Derek, because usually, all you're trying to do is get one finished and then try to come up with an idea for another one. In the newspaper business, it's called feeding the goat, because the goat is always hungry, and you always have to continue to come up with another idea and another story. So I didn't tally, but
okay, I was curious. I know that's my whole thing. All right, is how many people can I line up? Who's going to be the next guest? So I guess I'm feeding the goat at this point, and was thrilled to run into you at Pierpoint, not once, but twice, for some of our special evenings, which was dinner and a movie, the Anthony Bourdain, the Julia movie. So it was great seeing you there. Are there any columns that you've written that you think are standouts?
Oh, I don't know. I wrote the ones I won awards for. I wrote about the importance of the kitchen table as an American institution, pointing out that it was being threatened by the breakfast bar, and that the kitchen table is where conversations occur, where debates are held, where family matters are worked out, and it's pretty much you're chewing on what life has to offer at a kitchen table. So
I like chewing on. I like that.
Yeah.
The wordsmith.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the benefits from our generation, that my mother, we sat around the table. There was no TV or reading the newspaper. and your day was discussed. And that table is where I felt the love of the family. And nowadays, the kids are doing this, that, or the other. They're on the cell phones. But I agree with you. The kitchen table, to me, the best time I can have is to have people around the table and feed them and have conversation.
Yeah. And of course, it wasn't all loving at the table. There would be debates and disagreements. It was all part of family life, but that's the stuff of life as well.
Well, I've told this story, I think, once before. My sister and I used to antagonize my father. Whenever you said, pass the salt, he would instinctively salt his food and pass it. And we kept moving it around to him. And my sister and I would say, pass the salt. We'd do it a couple times. And then he'd bite into the food and say something to my mother, Esther, this food is too damn salty. But, kids, the little segments that you remember from the family table is important. The holidays are coming.
Yeah.
Passover, Easter.
Mm-hmm.
What are your plans and what are you cooking?
Well, funny you mention that, because yesterday I was on the trail of a butterflied leg of lamb, which is what I'm going to cook for my Easter gathering with my son and his wife and their little 2-year-old and my daughter-in-law's family in Towson. Ordinarily, I would call the butcher down at Cross Street Market, Fenwick's Fine Meats, a week or two in advance to get a butterflied leg of lamb. And I called and they said, too late. We don't have enough. We don't have any. And so then oh my God. So then I called Wegmans and got in Hunt Valley, and I got the meat department, and I said, I'm looking for a butterflied leg of lamb. And the guy said, just a minute. He came back and said, yeah, we have lamb legs. I said, well, can you butterfly them for me when I come out there? And he said, well, just a minute. He came back and said, we don't do that anymore. And I thought, you call yourself a butcher? And you don't. So then I went and I found some at Eddie's up on Charles Street. And sure enough, actually, Henry Reinsiger, who is connected to the butchery down in Cross Street Market, works there part-time as well, works at Eddie's. And he told me that he had ordered 7 big legs of lamb, and that's all he could get, and that they went real fast, and that all kinds of people were calling at the last minute like me. So that's what I take. I take the lamb, and it's from the cookbook, the barbecue book, Thrill of the Grill. And you take garlic, rosemary, thyme, basil, salt and pepper. You make a paste and rub it on the meat and let it sit for a while. I think I'm going to let it sit overnight. And then you build yourself a good barbecue fire, and you put it on the hot side of the grill for about 5 to 7 minutes just to get a nice char. And then you cooler side of the grill and keep it there for 20, 30 minutes. I have an instant read thermometer I stick in it, and when it gets to be I like my lamb medium rare or rare, so it's somewhere between 135 and 145. I'll pull it off and let it rest a while.
Yeah. It's interesting. We had a couple times our paths crossed. One time was at an MPT, mm-hmm. and Stephen Reichland was there, and you mm-hmm. use his book. You're into the barbecue, and didn't you interview him a couple times?
Oh yeah, I've seen Stephen. I've talked many times, and one time when he came, we went through around Baltimore and went through some of his old stopping points. We had a Cotty down on Lombard Street and a black and white cookie, and I forget what other places we stopped. But yeah, but I use his when I cook barbecued ribs. That's another one of my favorites. I use uh, his method, and he's changed it a bit. He now when you get the ribs, he covers them. Well, you skin them, of course, take the membrane off.
All right.
Then he puts Dijon mustard on them, and then I put
The dry rub.
the Boogs rub, and then let it sit overnight, and then cook them on the grill. So, and I use his brisket recipe too that comes out of Texas. Actually, it's interesting that there's a little sugar in that rub, just a little bit, and
To give it a
put
nice
that.
glaze. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I cook it on the grill, but I put it in an aluminum foil pan so that when the drippings come down, you don't lose them all. They stay in the pan and keep the brisket moist.
Right, and they don't cause a flare up either as
Right.
well. Um, being from Kansas, you are into barbecue. Are
Yeah.
you
Oh
are you
yeah.
Kansas? Are you North Carolina? What's your preference?
Kansas City is my favorite. I was whenever I was in, made many stops at Arthur Bryant's in Kansas City, famous barbecue. And my younger brother still lives in Kansas City area, and so we go to several burn ends and tip places. And there's a very strong barbecue culture in Kansas City. It's like the equivalent of crab cakes and crab places here.
Right.
And there are raging debates as to who's the best at that particular time. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's an art. It's an art. There's no doubt about it.
Let's talk your second book, um, Baltimore Beer: A Satisfying History of Charm
Mhm.
City Brewing. And I think when you came out with the book, people didn't realize how the depth of the local brewing history
Mhm.
and the early breweries. Now that book's in its fourth publication. Can you share an interesting snippet from the book that when you were putting it together, you thought, "Oh my
Well,
God, I didn't
yeah,
realize that."
yeah. I knew that Baltimore had a very strong German uh, culture, but I didn't realize how strong it was till I started reviewing and finding out all the brewers who came over in the 1850s from Germany and built these magnificent breweries. And I learned that the Baltimore City Council notes were printed in English and German
Really?
right
Okay.
up to World War One. So that's an indication of how strong the culture was, and you can see um, the vestiges of the brewing culture primarily up on Helen Street now, the old American brewery there. Big, beautiful building, and right across the street was where the brewers and the family lived, and that was part of the culture. Everything you were part of the brew. If you worked at a certain level, if you worked at a brewery, you were part of that family, and that uh, carried over. And interestingly enough, some of the brewers took care of the health insurance, if you will, for their workers.
That
Well ahead of current.
what is common today?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the other interesting there I found was that before refrigeration, they had to keep when you lagered a beer, which you do if you're not making a lager. That's you put it in storage, cold storage, and that they would bring ice down from Maine on clipper ships. The coming of the ice from Maine was a big deal, and then they'd cut it up and put it into the various deep recesses caves of underground caves like those on under Hillen Street uh, for the beer to lager. Um, it was
Yeah.
It also, anecdotally, that, putting beer on ice like that in caves led to a lot of diseases or a lot of health issues, including tuberculosis for the workers. So when refrigeration came, it was a welcome arrival for brewers and the workers.
Just to remind people that that book, all three books are still available. Put in Rob Kasper at Amazon.com and you'll see the three books there. So pick up a copy. You are a founding member of Baltimore Beer Week.
Yep.
How did that get started? Who were your other members who helped kick off this? What's it been, like 15, 20 years that you've been doing that?
Now Baltimore Beer Week is officially retired. It's now more freelance operation. But Joe Gold was really one of the big organizers of that, and decided that we needed to celebrate all things beer in Baltimore. And so we got together and put up a variety of events at various taverns and restaurants around the city. And kicked it off with a tapping of a keg down in the harbor. Actually, Boo Powell swang the first mallet that tapped the first keg, and we were down on the Constellation. It's a beautiful, beautiful night. One of those warm fall nights. And
Right.
And it was very successful. I think it became pretty much a product of its own success, because there's so many breweries and so many brewing activities that you really don't need a week to promote it. It's constantly being promoted.
It's funny you bring that up. My next question, I said, so many craft brewers. Star Trek, the original, had this fuzzy character little thing called Tribbles that kept multiplying and multiplying. And it's, how do you feel about all the new breweries? I mean, they're just replicating themselves. It's like multiplied exponentially. Everywhere I turn, there's a new brewery, a new craft beer. Your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I mean,
You like beer.
Yeah, it's common. It's a common behavior in American culture. When something is successful, it gets imitated time and time again. And that's true with dishes and food. And it's also, I think that's what's happened to the brewing movement in the United States. A lot of guys and some gals got out of college and said, what are we going to do? And let's brew. And so they began brewing. And some of them knew what they were doing. Some were learning as they went along, and the product showed. And for a while, they were doing really well, because when they had, they were running a brewery and then would sell beers at the brewery in a tap room. So they didn't have the expense of putting it through a distributor, and rather they saw the results came back right away. But then COVID hit, and that stopped that for a lot of places, because of course you couldn't have the tap room going because of the restrictions. So a lot of them fell by the wayside, and now I think there's a shakeout, and I think some of the better brewers are holding on. The tap rooms are open again, and we'll see. I do think, I'm a kind of a dinosaur in that I like Pilsner beers, and I like unmitigated beers, not beers that have a lot of ingredients in them. And I think I've seen after everybody was trying to make an IPA that had so many hops in it you could basically chew it, that we're going back to simpler beers.
Yeah.
Some more straightforward flavors, well done. Brewers are like chefs. They get bored, and they tried to do many different things, which is sort of the nature of the business. You have to control them. Say, this is a great brewing accomplishment. Okay, would you want to have another one? Would you want to have two? That's what I always ask about these tremendous beers. So if you
Right.
do, the answer is yes, then you succeeded. If the answer is no, then it was just an experiment.
Right. Have a question for you. Um, you have become a dyed-in-the-wool Baltimore boy. Are there any other places in the country or abroad that you would like to, a place where you would like to live other than Baltimore?
Oh yeah, Italy. Yeah, we went there as a family 2 or 3 times, and food, fashion, and family. It's a tremendous culture. And again, the food is not that really complicated. It's just
No.
fresh and straight, uh,
Right.
and that's great. Now, I don't know. Seems to me Italy has figured out how to live. They haven't figured out how to govern. They are constantly, in turmoil about,
Halfway.
yeah, that and I guess the COVID situation has calmed down a bit there. It was bad for a long time. I liked
Yeah.
Italy quite a bit, and of course I like Paris, but um, you have to be very very well off, I think, to enjoy Paris. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Um, you interviewed so many famous food people and other notables. Are there any that are standouts or humorous or a story you wish to share about them?
Oh well, yeah. I mean, my favorite food writer was Calvin Trillin, who, of course, did grow up in Kansas City and wrote, many books and wrote for the New Yorker, and was a very gifted writer, and a humorist, and could write about food in an interesting and engaging way, and blend in humor. If I could do an iota of what he did, I felt greatly accomplished. And I loved Garrison Keillor. I loved all the stories he told, and I liked his oral work better than his written work. But his both were good. And Russell Baker, his book Growing Up was very influential to me. And it's interesting, Dara, when I talked to them, I'd asked them about the kitchen tables of their youth, and both Baker and Keillor said, "Oh yeah, that was where they listened to a lot of stories." Baker in West Baltimore, uh, Keillor and Cora, Minnesota, outside of Minneapolis. So that whole idea of listening, being like the fly on the wall, and listening and hearing about adults misbehaving or behaving, and then crafting it into stories. That's where it got started.
Our paths crossed, as I said earlier, and the last time I remember being involved with one of the columns that you wrote is when the food blogger started. Now we're talking 15 years ago, before Instagram, before Twitter, and all of a sudden this little berry came out called the Miracle Berry. I don't know if you remember that. And just to remind people, I don't know the true long name of it. It's a berry that if you chew, that you can eat anything sour and it makes it taste sweet.
Yeah.
And we were up in Mount Vernon, a teeny little apartment, and it was like 12 of us, and we have different foods out, and we kept biting the berry and saying, so now you can get it. It was so hard to come by at that time, but everybody wanted to experience it. I don't know if you remember that or not.
I'm vaguely, now that you mentioned it, but did it last? I mean, people still chewing the berry?
It's on Amazon.com. It's called the Miracle Berry. Go get it, people.
Well, I thought it was sort of a one-off, but I could looks like I was wrong.
Well, you may be if you're diabetic. I don't know. Um, let's see. Before I forget, if anybody wanted to reach you at this time, is there an email or a link or any place, or just that should they contact me and then I have
Well,
my
I'm on
contact?
I'm on Facebook, and they can contact you, and you can give them my email. That's fine. Yeah, as
Okay.
long as there's not a subpoena involved. I'm
No,
like,
I've gotten all those. They're all out of the way. They are. So let me come down. We're going to sort of wrap up. I have some questions that I ask at the end of the show. 30 years of writing about food. It's really hard to comprehend in a short interview. So, if you could go back and give your 18-year-old self a piece of advice, what would it be?
well, I can continue to be curious, and don't necessarily stay in your hometown. I traveled outside my hometown, and you see a lot more of the world that way, and you might get out of your comfort zone, but it's well worth it. Well worth it.
Okay. If you could wake up tomorrow and have a new talent, what would the new talent be?
I'd love to be able to play the piano. My late wife, played the piano beautifully. We have a big piano in a home, and I can see how having a musical talent and skill can be so therapeutic and so life affirming. And I can whistle, and that's about it. Yeah.
I can't even do that.
Yeah.
My thing is to be able to sing, and people have heard this before. I was asked to lip sync at my high school graduation. That be the truth, true that. Um, your most epic culinary fail.
Oh, well, that would be when I tried to knock the Black-Eyed Susan out of the Preakness. Back in the 1980s, I had as a device for the column, I said, the Black-Eyed Susan is a drink nobody really liked. It consists of equal parts of rum, vodka, fruit juice, and bad judgment. And unlike I haven't come from Kentucky, where the julep was such a big part of the Derby celebration. And the people at the track who sold the Black-Eyed Susan kept changing the recipes, putting different things in. So I with help from my colleague Fred Rasmussen and we got readers to send in suggestions for their favorite cocktail, the one to replace the Black-Eyed Susan. And we finally picked this one called the Mr. Pym that had a little bourbon, a little lemon in it. It was really quite good, made by a man in South Baltimore, or in Anne Arundel County, I think. And tried to kick it out of, get it to replace the Black-Eyed Susan. No movement at all. It was like, who are you? Nice, next.
Okay.
Yeah, next.
And yeah, and my final question, what didn't I ask you that I should have?
Well, I guess, the effect my wife had on me of teaching me how to cook and tolerating all the columns that I'd write about family life, that she became something of a character out. So.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry for your loss. I've had my own, so I understand. And I hope to see you around at Nancy's. Pierpoint, everybody, Pierpoint Restaurant down in Fells Point is back open for dinner. And
she can cook.
Yep. And follow her Facebook page because she's always doing special events and boxes. And we also do dinner and a movie. I set it up and I put it out on Facebook to my friends. So find me on Facebook, Dara Bunjon. This is not hard. You just have to figure out how to spell it. Rob, I want to thank you. I look forward to seeing you soon again over some great dish. We'll sit around the table and we'll talk. It
Yeah,
shouldn't be a problem.
that's
I
it.
wish you the best of the holiday season. And thank you again for joining us. And I have a couple of announcements. So let's see. There we are. Next week's guest is Laurie Boucher. She is a retired attorney, now a chef, and a pastapreneur. She is the queen of pasta, and anything that you want to know about pasta, tune in next week. And a reminder that J More Living is hosting an Aging Gratefully program. It is free in person on Tuesday, April 26, 5 p.m. at the Gordon Center for Performing Arts. Exhibitors will offer giveaways starting at 5 p.m. 6 p.m. Enjoy a moderated conversation, Aging with Gratitude, featuring experts on all aspects of aging. It isn't just for seniors. Bring your significant other, friends, and adult children and experience the benefits of, again, experience the benefits. I got to correct this. No, experience the benefits. You can register at jmoreliving.com backslash aging, jmoreliving.com backslash aging. Before I forget, to everyone, happy Passover, happy Easter. May your tables be bountiful. You can reach me at any time at my email, food@jmoreliving.com. My Instagram is at Dara Cooks for a follow. Would love that. The show's video will immediately be up on J More Living's Facebook page and Instagram. And not Instagram, it'll be up on J More Living's Facebook page and website, jmoreliving.com. Feel free to go back to our archives at any time. There's over 100 shows there. So dig in, find somebody you're interested in listening to, and jump into the interviews. I thank you for watching and sharing the show with friends and family. It helps us grow. So until next week, may your plates always remain full.